adult age being more active in going to healthcare services and so on. So that's why you have more infection for hepatitis C virus during your adult age. The carrier state is most common in hepatitis C virus among all the hepatitis viruses. It is more common even in hepatitis B because of that there are mostly chronic infections which are actually existent with hepatitis C. It uncommonly leads to acute setting of infection. The incubation period here is again 6 to somewhere 4 months, 6 weeks to 4 months. Till 120 days after uptake from positive hepatitis C patient, a person can become infected for hepatitis C virus. So now coming to this diagram, you can see hepatitis A and E, they are unenveloped viruses. B, it is enveloped viruses. We'll go into detail of this gain particle. And then these are the filamentous and the spherical particles of HBs antigen, which are actually roaming around in the blood. And this complete virus is not found exactly in the blood. Then coming to this hepatitis C virus, this is again enveloped virus having projections of E protein, and this D virus, which is unenveloped. It derives its envelope from the hepatitis B virus only. Coming to hepatitis A virus infection. So in the present lecture, in the given class, we will discuss only hepatitis A and E. Right? B and C we will be taking in the next class. So you can see the red area all over the world is actually the distribution of hepatitis A virus infection. You can clearly see uh, on both sides of equator, actually mostly in the tropical countries where there are problems of contaminated food and water. So there all actually hepatitis A virus infection is existent, and in India it is highly prevalent. The epidemiology of hepatitis A virus is rapidly changing nowadays. It was used to be the earlier studies, epidemiological studies from Pune have shown that in India in early 2000s, the studies actually they date back to 2001. The data of that times in late 90s suggested that almost more than 95% children by the age of 5 years would be having hepatitis A virus infection either asymptomatically and symptomatically, and more than 95% of children would be becoming lifelong immune with natural infection of hepatitis A virus. However, due to more hygienic conditions which are coming in the society nowadays, people are using more and more safe drinking practices. The epidemiology has turned slightly differently at present, and the data now suggests that even in adolescents nowadays, hardly 50 to 60% of adolescents are actually immune to hepatitis A virus. So, if hepatitis A virus is contracted early in life, in childhood, then there are more chances of developing IgG antibodies and lifelong immunity. Whereas, if it is not contracted early in the life, and if the infection occurs later in adolescence or adult age group, there are more chances that you will have a symptomatic disease. So, as I've already told you, Picorna viridae family, there is a capsule and RNA is standing in between. This is a 27 to 28 nanometer diameter particle, icosahedral shaped, which is known envelope. There are more than three genotypes. However, the serotype is only one for hepatitis A virus. Resistance, this is important that this is fairly resistant to heat and chemicals. If you This virus can stand heating at 60 degrees Celsius for almost 1 hour. Normal chlorination at usual doses will not kill this virus in the water. Formalin can be very effective disinfectant, but we cannot be used for water resources or commonly. The virus is inactivated by ultraviolet light. If you boil the water for 5 minutes, if you heat at 85 degrees Celsius for 1 minute, right? However, it survives in seawater as well as in dried feces for 4 weeks. That is very important because there is a strong fecal-oral route transmission. So, human cases are only the reservoir of infection. The largest period of infectivity, a person who is getting infected, he will be in the most infectious phase 2 weeks before to 1 week after the onset of jaundice, right? 2 weeks before the onset of jaundice and 1 week later. So that is very important. 2 weeks before, you don't know that you are going to develop jaundice, right? Infective material is again man's feces, and virus excretion will happen 2 weeks before to 2 weeks later after the onset of jaundice. So maybe infectivity is coming down, but virus will keep on excreting in your feces till 2 weeks later. So now the routes of transmission, although fecal-oral is the main route, but once patient is infectious, if there is intrafamilial sexual contact with an infected person can happen. If you donate the blood during the incubation period, you are not aware, then it can be actually through the parental route also, that somebody is getting a blood unit from a hepatitis A preemptive patient who himself doesn't know that he is going to develop hepatitis A. So really it can be a parental transmission also. So who are the persons at risk? See, we are living in a tropical area, so we are at least risk because we must have contracted the virus either during childhood or in early adolescence and subsequently becoming immune. So travelers who are coming to the endemic area, any person from Western countries when arriving in India and taking outside food, so he will be more contracting the virus. He is non-immune to that. Next is sexual contact of the infected persons, household members, males having sex with men having sex with men only, homosexual contacts, and then drug abusers. Because again, I told you, parental transmission can happen through the drug abusers. In the before the in during the incubation period, somebody may be unaware that he is infected from this jaundice. Now, this is the same thing. Which are the body secretions which could be infected in it? The bile actually is very, very important, and bile is the thing which will carry the virus from the liver to the gut, and subsequently it will be excreted through the feces. And this feces will be going into the water table, into your sewage disposal, which will be infecting your water supplies and so on. And that's how the virus actually keeps on surviving, and as well as going in community causing a hyperendemicity or epidemic like thing, right? So blood transmission, I've already told you, urine and nasopharyngeal secretions are in very low numbers and it is hardly seen. Um, Actually, maybe detectable, but they are not that much effective. Now coming to clinical features, this is very very important. The hepatitis A virus can present as five presentations. It can be completely asymptomatic without having any jaundice. This is very important. So most of the children who will be infected very early in age, that is less than 5 years, would have asymptomatic illness. In children, 95% of children, if infected, would have asymptomatic phase. There won't be any symptoms, no jaundice would happen, and just they will be infected and they will keep on developing, they will go on developing IgG antibodies and lifelong immunity. Only 5% of them will have a symptomatic illness. The symptomatic illness can be there with jaundice, and it is usually self-limiting after 8 weeks. The patient can go into a cholestatic phase also. Cholestatic means that patient along with jaundice will have cholestatic symptoms like pruritus and clay colored stools, and this may last longer than normally. If there is a hepatocellular jaundice only, then the illness will be shorter. However, if there is development of cholestasis, which is intrahepatic cholestasis and hepatitis A, then this illness will be protracted and for a long duration of time, right? But overall, the outcome of the illness will not be bad, right? But the illness will be prolonged. So the illness may last more than 10 weeks, maybe more than 2 months, right? Sometimes what happens in hepatitis A, once it is resolving, it can relapse in a short period of time to recur, right? So this is known as relapse. The two episodes will be very, very near to us, near to each other. Suppose patient's jaundice is coming down, and after 1.5 months, again there is a surge in jaundice, and so he will have relapsing hepatitis, right? And but overall, the outcome of this illness is again not bad. Now coming to fulminant hepatic failure. Rarely in hepatitis A, not commonly, patient may move towards development of acute liver failure and fulminant hepatic failure, which is usually less than 1 to 2 months that it will happen. As I told you, development of INR more than 1.5 and hepatic encephalopathy. So now coming to this thing, that if a children is infected, more than 95% will go on to develop asymptomatic phase and subsequently they will be lifelong immune. But as you move towards adolescence and adult age, more symptomatic phases would be seen. less of the asymptomatic proportion would be there, and there would be more chances of cholestatic and relapsing and fulminant hepatic failures. So early in life, if the virus is contracted, the illness is more benign and is more asymptomatic, and uh, yeah, or is associated with less of the complications. Later you get infected with the virus, more chances of getting symptomatic disease as well as going towards complication. Now symptoms are as patient may have very low grade fever, fatigue, nausea, loss of appetite, vomiting. There may be hepatomegaly on examination. Patient will have dark urine and pale stools, that is clay colored stools in case of cholestatic symptoms. Patient may have jaundice, abdominal pain, and he may have a history of diarrhea and cervical lymphadenopathy. Now, diagnosis, you may demonstrate the virus in feces, blood, or bile, which is actually very difficult because you have to go for RT-PCR test, which is not routinely available and is a costlier investigation. So, most commonly, first of all, you will diagnose the viral hepatitis by doing liver function test, that is bilirubin, enzymes, and PT-INR. So, bilirubin will be on the higher side, and enzymes will be more than 10 times upper limit of normal. The upper limit of normal for AST and ALT are 40 units per liter. So if you get the enzymes more than 10 times upper limit of normal, more than 500, and with jaundice, it is highly suggestive of that patient has developed acute hepatitis, and in Indian setting it is mostly acute viral hepatitis, either because of A or E, right? And then INR will actually tell us regarding the prognosis. If it is more than 1.5, this will be called as severe acute hepatitis, and if patient goes on to develop encephalopathy, then it will be acute liver failure. Coming to detection of antibody, this is most important thing. IgM and IgG antibodies for anti-HAV are done to diagnose the infection. So this is again serological markers, which is actually very very important. You should understand that here the patient is developing symptoms. However, the feces hepatitis A virus can be positive 1 week before illness has started here. However, patient has developed secretion of hepatitis A virus before it, and he is in an infective stage. Here, where all other people will be getting infected, right? As the symptoms start, your IgM antibodies keep on rising, right? So once there are symptoms, IgM antibodies keep on rising, and once the symptoms start abating, the IgM antibodies would also start coming down. And as these antibodies will be coming down, there will be start of rise of IgG antibodies, which will be a marker of long-term immunity. I hope that all of you understand what is IgM and what is IgG. IgM antibodies in any of the viral or any of the bacterial illnesses, they actually denote acute infectivity because of that. This is an acute response to an infection. However, development of IgG antibodies, which are long-standing, having memory B cells, so there actually the immunity will be last long lasting, right? Here the immunity will be almost lifelong, which will be happening. So IgM antibodies, once you have symptoms, will be becoming positive in the blood. So by the time you get your patients, IgM antibodies will be positive. And in case sometimes they are declining trend and you may not get IgM antibodies because of certain problems, so you can also go for RT-PCR studies for hepatitis A virus quantification of qualitative test. Complications, acute fulminant hepatitis, as already told, cholestatic hepatitis, nephrotic syndrome, chronic autoimmune hepatitis, relapsing hepatitis, and some extra hepatic manifestations can also happen, which are most commonly rash, arthralgias, leukocytoclastic vasculitis, glomerulonephritis. A disturbed immune response happens in the body starts reacting to its own antigens, and so on. So there are so many things that can be caused, but they are very rare. Cryoglobulinemia, toxic epidermal necrolysis, renal failure, aplastic anemia, optic neuritis, and so on. So, how to prevent the illness? There should be a provision of safe and clean drinking water, proper sewage disposal, and public education for hygiene should be there. There should be an active and passive immunization program. Among the immune prophylaxis, see, acutely exposed persons can be given immune prophylaxis with IgG antibodies. However, in hyperendemic areas like India, it is actually ineffective in interrupting common source outbreaks. Right, so you cannot use that. If there is an outbreak in Rohtak, we cannot give IgG to everyone and then it will be broken up. No, only in acutely exposed areas, some traveler has come here, he can be targeted and then it can be given. Otherwise, no. Now, coming to vaccination, we have very good vaccine with a very good efficacy for hepatitis C, which gives protection up to 20 years. And it is very, very important in patients of chronic liver disease, where acute hepatitis A infection can lead to decompensation. Patients who are awaiting liver transplant or post liver transplant, or HIV patients, especially for patients who are already immunosuppressed, and if they get the viral illness, then they may have a poor course, right? So, and post exposure prophylaxis is can be given in this virus infection, and for that actually you use passive immunization in addition to the active immunization. For active immunization, we have hepatitis A virus antigen, which can be, there are three different types of vaccines which are available: Vecta, Havrix, and Twinrix. And most of these schedules are actually two doses are needed, one at zero dose, and one is the first is the zero dose followed by second dose at 6 to 12 months or 18 months. Now, the outcome of hepatitis A virus, as I already told you, is 99% recovery rate, and 4 to 20% of clinical relapse can happen, and fulminant hepatic failure is less than 0.5%. Coming to hepatitis A virus, as already told, this is unenveloped RNA virus, single stranded. Now, in this virus, as I already told you, this is uncommon in children, but it is common in adults and especially common during pregnancy, right? And it has a very high affliction rate in pregnant women, and a high case fatality rate of 15 to 25% in pregnant women. And especially in the last trimester of pregnancy, if it is happening, then there is a large possibility of actually going into premature labor, fetal demise, as well as hepatic encephalopathy, acute liver failure, and increased mortality. And it is normally associated with, there are likely chances, actually more chances of developing cholestasis with this. There are four genotypes, and genotype 1 is most common in India. It is highly endemic in India. This was first diagnosed in 19 after 1985, and the first outbreak in India as per known is was in 1951 in Delhi. What are the similarities? They have acute onset between hepatitis A and E. They have mild illness. Both are through the fecal-oral route. Now, differences between A and E. A is more common in children, E in adults. E can cause fulminant hepatitis more commonly in pregnant females. Secondary attack of HEV. What do you mean by that? Suppose there is a patient of hepatitis E. How many other patients he will lead on to be infecting? So this rate of hepatitis E is very low. However, in hepatitis A, the secondary attack rate is very high. This is very, very important. People who remember their PSM days must be aware what is secondary attack rate. If there is an index case, how many other people he will be infecting? Like today we are talking of COVID. There is a high secondary attack rate, right? So in case of hepatitis A, the secondary attack rate is very low. It is 2 to 3%. Now, coming to two genotypes of hepatitis E, genotype 1 and genotype 3. 1 is more common in India, it has no animal reservoir, whereas 3 is more common in Europe, which has a more animal reservoir. They eat deer meat, and from where it gets transported, and there are the chances of getting infected, especially in patients who are immunosuppressed or patients of post liver transplant. Now, the clinical features. Again, there can be asymptomatic illness, anectric illness, icteric hepatitis, which patients who are having jaundice, and there may be development of fulminant hepatic failure. So, relapsing and cholestatic are less common with hepatitis E. However, cholestasis may happen, but less of the chances. But relapsing type of course is more common with hepatitis A virus. Now, coming to the your serological markers, the same way the things will be going on for hepatitis E again. As your symptoms will be appearing, your RNA will be abating in the serum, as well as your IgM antibodies will be rising, and they will be, as they will be declining, it will be taken up by the IgG antibodies. So IgG antibodies also become lower in hepatitis E after 3 to 5 years. However, the lifelong immunity after a single hepatitis E virus is not documented. However, no second case that one person is, I mean to say that whether hepatitis E virus leads to lifelong immunity, uh, infection leads to lifelong immunity, it is unclear. Because the IgG antibodies, which are actually generated in response to acute hepatitis E virus, they get abated after a few years. However, no patient till date has been reported to develop recurrent infection of hepatitis E after the first attack. It has not been known that today somebody has developed hepatitis C virus infection and after 10 years it has again developed. But definitely IgG antibodies keep on disappearing from the body after 3 to 5 years. So you can see the levels are coming down. So how? Both the treatments I'm taking together, A and E. So acute hepatitis E is again self-limiting. Only supportive care. You have to ask the patient to be properly hydrated, good water intake as well as glucose intake. As liver is an organ for gluconeogenesis and glycogenolysis. So if there is a liver illness, then there are chances of getting hypoglycemia. So one should take plenty of water and plenty of glucose and sweet foods, and there is no restriction as such, but patient should take complete bed rest because exertion can actually exacerbate the illness, right? Once patient moves toward fulminant hepatitis course, then it is a different matter, but most of the time illness is self-limiting and it will be curing by itself. In pregnant women, the treatment protocol remains the same. However, even then the chances of complications are higher, and so uh, there are more chances of going into fulminant hepatic failure or acute liver failure. So there is a vaccine actually which has been developed for the hepatitis E virus infection also, and there was a large study in Nepal which was done around 5 to 7 years back. However, vaccine has shown 95.5% protective efficacy against hepatitis E disease in those who received 3 doses versus 88.5% efficacy who received even single dose of the vaccine. However, the vaccine never see light of the day because maybe and there were certain financial issues with the pharma companies, and so it has not come up. But you must remember that hepatitis E virus is mainly a disease of South Asia, especially in India. Most of the literature and research for hepatitis E virus has come out of India only, and especially from Lucknow. And these are the only Indian authors which have actually published large things about hepatitis E. This is from Lucknow and Kashmir. Now, this vaccine may be very useful, especially for the pregnant females who have never contracted the virus, and if they contract the virus during pregnancy. So, but till date, there are no guidelines for these vaccines, and these are not available in market. Now, coming to acute liver failure. In the same lecture, I will be completing the acute liver failure. So, this acute viral hepatitis setting, if it is benign, it will be, getting auto-treated, right? More than 95% of these cases will be, very benign, and there will be self-limiting. However, some patients out of them will have a poor course. How it will be decided? If the prothrombin time increases and INR becomes more than 1.5, the illness is known called as severe acute hepatitis. And if there is development of hepatic encephalopathy, uh, like cerebral symptoms start coming, patient becomes drowsy, then we call it as acute liver failure. So once patient goes towards acute liver failure, virus is hitting the liver, there is large immune response of the body, hepatocytes start getting destructive, and so you start losing your hepatocytes very fast, right? So there are less clotting factors actually which are being formed, which is reflected by increased prothrombin time, right? And the second thing, the ammonia cycle gets disturbed, so there is increase in the ammonia in the blood not getting converted into urea, and therefore there will be development of hepatic encephalopathy, right? And because liver is acting like a sieve in your body, so there will be less filtration of the toxins and bacteria which are coming from the gut, so there will be very likely chances that you will be secondarily infected during that illness. So acute liver failure, the definitions of acute liver failure are further defined by what is the time of onset of encephalopathy from the onset of jaundice, right? So if the jaundice to encephalopathy time is less than 7 days, it is known as hyperacute illness, and if it is 8 to 28 days, it is known as acute liver failure, and if it is 1 month to 3 months, then it is known as subacute, and if it is more than 6 months, it is known as late onset hepatic failure. So here I am concerned only with the first two, hyperacute and acute. So these two will come into the acute liver failure setting. Why we are differentiating this less than 7 days and 8 to 28 days? So for you to understand this, a liver is a unique organ which has a large regenerative capacity. Have you heard of starfish? If starfish loses one arm, then it will be regrown, right? Same way is the liver. So liver has a capacity. It is the only organ which can regenerate by itself. If it is destructed by the virus, there is a capacity for liver to regenerate. It will regrow to its normal size. But then there are certain limitations. If it is very, very early in the phase of the illness, then the possibility of liver regeneration is very high. However, the process, more late the necrosis would happen in an onset of jaundice, very less chances of liver regeneration would be there. So hyperacute within less than 7 days, if there is development of jaundice to encephalopathy, there will be very likely chances that liver will regenerate and prognosis would be very good, right? Prognosis will be better. However, if it if the encephalopathy happens beyond 7 days, then the chances of regeneration are poor, and there the prognosis will be poor, right? So the disease encephalopathy will be marked by development of psychosis and meningoencephalitis. Patient becomes deeply jaundiced. There will be fetal hepaticus, that is ammoniac odor will be there, confusion and drowsiness. Flapping tremor will be seen, and rigidity may come, and finally a stage of coma can come. I will go into all these symptoms detail grade 1, 2, 3, 4 encephalopathy in my serotic complications. There I would tell you, right? So here again, due to infection, leukocytosis can happen. Bilirubin and transaminases are poor indicators of prognosis, and by the time the patient deteriorates, the transaminase levels will be coming down. Right, blood coagulation will be strongly diminished because you will have not formation of clotting factors, and increased prothrombin time more than 100 seconds is a very poor prognostic indicator. Right, so INR is actually a prognostic indicator. If INR is more than 6.5, it is a poor prognostic indicator. Now again, fulminant hepatic failure can present as complications of hepatic encephalopathy, cerebral edema, sepsis, renal failure, and all other organ failures in the form of cardiovascular dysfunction going into shock, pulmonary failure going like ARDS and pulmonary edema. Patient may have coagulopathy, which may lead to gastrointestinal and diffuse generalized bleeding from all the natural orifices. And patient may have metabolic acidosis, hypoglycemia, hypophosphatemia, and so on. So these are the organs when liver starts failing can be happening, can affect the brain with development of encephalopathy, lungs, heart, kidneys, gut, right? And then muscles, rhabdomyolysis may start, and immune paresis leading to leukocytosis and getting infections. So there are King's College criteria for prognosticating these patients of acute liver failure. Acetaminophen is the most common cause of acute liver failure in Western countries, whereas hepatitis A and E, they are more common causes of acute liver failure in Eastern countries like in Southeast Asia and India. So PCM poisoning again is very, very important cause of acute liver failure. If the prognosis is suggested by arterial pH less than 7.3, or if all three of them are present, that is INR more than 6.5, high creatinine, encephalopathy grade 3 to 4. So these are the indication. If these factors are present in a given patient, then they are the indications for liver taking the patient for liver transplantation, right? So normally medically, the cerebral edema can be managed by raising the patient's head to 35 to 40 degree above horizontal, and we should not move the head unnecessarily. We should give patient oxygen supplementation. Hypercapnia should be avoided. CO2 washout should be given, because CO2 washout causes cerebral vasoconstriction and helps in reducing cerebral edema. And subsequently, mannitol can be given in these patients to reduce the cerebral edema. And some medical management can take out some patients, but not definitely all of them. Sepsis should be dealt with, proper antibiotics and cultures. Renal failure again with dopamine and proper fluid infusions. And if you require dialysis, coagulopathy again with ALF. If there is a development of coagulopathy, there is actually no role of fresh frozen plasma or coagulation or blood products, but you have to move to the liver transplantation, because it is a liver which is failing, it is not making the clotting factors. So even if you give from outside it, this is not going to work for a long time. So liver transplantation, urgent liver transplantation is now the standard therapy for acute liver failure, and it has a very good outcome. The 5-year survival is 85 to 90%, right? But if there is a irreversible brain damage, patient is going towards brain death, don't do it. uncontrolled sepsis, HIV, and coexistent malignant disease. It is not advisable. Right. So by this, I finish my today's lecture, which was regarding acute viral hepatitis and acute liver failure. And I hope you could understand all these things. One more thing regarding acute liver failure: the causes of acute liver failure were not taken into the given lecture, but most commonly it happens due to acute viral hepatitis in India. This is because of E, which is more common, A, it is less common. Hepatitis B infection can also lead on to acute liver failure. Then the other causes in India are drug-induced liver failures. Among the drugs which are very, very important are the anti-tubercular drugs in India, like pyrazinamide, INH, and rifampicin, which are hepatotoxic drugs. So here, anti-tubercular drug-induced ALF, which is very, very common, and then the next drug is paracetamol poisoning, which is less common in India and more common in Western countries, right? 7 to 10 gram of paracetamol is actually hepatotoxic. This is a dose-dependent hepatotoxicity which paracetamol causes, and uh, somehow in India it is not very much common. The other causes are many other toxins and mushroom poisonings, which can actually lead on to liver failure, and many other drugs also, like anti-epileptics, phenytoin, and so on. So drugs are there, but we don't stop using them. But those drugs are actually not common causes of acute liver failure; they are uncommon causes of acute liver failure. So thank you. If there are any questions, you can ask me. मैंने क्वेश्चन मांगे हैं, कैसे पता चलेगा? क्वेश्चन मांगे हैं, कैसे पता चलेगा? आए हैं कुछ क्वेश्चन? दे आर ओनली गिविंग अटेंडेंस है। तो ठीक है, मेरा लेक्चर बंद करो, कैसे करेंगे? जाऊँ? आप बंद कर दोगे या मैं कर दूँ? कितने बच्चे आए थे? 160 170